I really love this episode, this content. Like I really loved it. I mean, I've been thinking about it, like the place of geographical resonance and capital. Like it was hitting me as you were speaking. Like I really loved it. I really loved it. It has been something I've been thinking about, to visiting places of influence on whatever I'm doing. God richly bless you.
Hello there and welcome to today's video on Signs of a Succeeding System Part 1. Signs of a Succeeding System Part 1 because there's so much to share around signs of a succeeding system. I'm going to be doing two parts. Part 1 is going to come from a scriptural perspective, and Part 2 is going to come from strictly a business point of view that I speak extensively about in my second book, Understanding Systems Thinking, the Modern Art of Building Learning Organizations. And so, signs of a succeeding system, I was reading my Bible in the book of 1 Kings chapter 10 verse 1 downwards, and there's something that caught my attention that I thought I'd bring you insight and excerpts that I picked from that particular scripture about how systems are structured, about the science that informs a system that will succeed. And so the scripture says that, and when the Queen of Sheba heard of the fame of Solomon concerning the name of the Lord, she came to prove him with hard questions. And she came to Jerusalem with a great train, with camels that bear spices, and very much gold and precious stones. And when she came to Solomon, she communed with him of all that was in her heart. So the first thing she did was she came to prove Solomon with hard questions, and we see that she had the opportunity to commune with Solomon of the things that was in her heart. And again, before she even had the opportunity to commune with Solomon of the things that was in her heart, we see that she did not come empty-handed. She came with gifts. Just on the side note, I see this with a lot of young people, and most of the times I tell my mentee that this is a practice that I move around with. No matter what it is, you do not sit with somebody that you call a mentor, a leader, somebody that has more results than you, and you talk with the person as though the person is your mate. Number one. Number two, you do not go to such a person empty-handed. We see, as great as the Queen of Sheba is, she came bearing gifts. And so one of the things that I do a lot, I never visit my mentor empty-handed. I go with a gift. I go with something, because at the end of the day, it is all part of the value system that you are striking or you are seeking to create. And so we carry on. It says that, and Solomon told her all her questions. There was not anything hid from the king which he told her not. Verse 4 says, and when the Queen of Sheba had seen all of Solomon's wisdom, and the house that he had built, and the meat on his table, and the sitting of his servants, and the attendance of his ministers, and their apparel, and his cupbearers, and his ascent by which he went up unto the house of the Lord, there was no more spirit in her. Now, that is where the key is. That is where content from. That is why I draw inspiration to bring you this content today, guys. Now, he says that, verse 4, he says, and when the Queen of Sheba had seen all of Solomon's wisdom, and the house that he had built, and the meat that was at his table, before then he started with questions. Now, I believe that the wisdom of men is not necessarily determined by the kind of structure that they build. I rather believe that the wisdom of men is determined by the kind of foundation that they have built for that structure. So your wisdom is not necessarily determined by the edifice that you have built, but by the foundation of the edifice that you have built. I also believe that every system has its set of rules that it operates by. And so if you are in a system and you want to be a part of the system, then one of the things that you must follow is the rules that comes with the system. Now, the first thing you will notice from the scripture is that she came to prove Solomon with hard questions. I have always said, a question asking company will become an answer providing company to the world. It is non-debatable. The more you sit down to question the realities of your business, the more you sit down to question the realities of your life, of anything that becomes a system around you, of your family, the more you find answers to them. And if you are finding answers, you become an answer providing hub if you're a business, or you become somebody who has the answers to the demands and the questions of humanity. And so I had an AMA session, Ask Me Anything session in our Telegram community recently, and it made me appreciate that the things that seemingly we seem to have mastered, people really have a lot of challenges going through and dealing with them. I had people asking me basic questions as how to deal with inconsistencies amongst other things. And people were marveled as to how I was able to answer every single question that I was asked. The AMA lasted for 3 hours. And so if you are not in our Telegram community, again, you are missing out greatly. And so the link to the Telegram community will be shared in the comment, or you can go to Telegram and search for Moses B. Arthur -Dream Dare and Do community. Now, I'm looking at this and and everybody is stand at my level of wisdom in answering the questions that I was asked. And I told one of the guys, I said, it's because number one, I have been through what you are going through before. Number two, I have lived through some of these experiences through those who have gone through it by asking them questions. Number three, myself, I have taken time off to question a number of things. And so I have found answers to them. And that's how come I can be much of a blessing to you today. Anything that you do not have understanding into, have you taken time off to ask yourself the requisite and necessary questions that go by it? If not, you should, because in your doing so, you will definitely find the answers that you need to them. So one of the greatest signs, or one of the first signs of a succeeding system, is a system that is constantly asking questions, a system that is constantly evaluating its processes and coming back with more solid feedbacks and strategies to keep the system going. Now, the next thing you would see that the Queen of Sheba notices when it comes to Solomon and his empire or his system that he had built, he said the meat that was on his table. As a company, when you and your team meet, what meat do you feed on? Now, when I say when you and your team meet, what meat? It may sound contradictory. When you and your team meet, M-E-E-T, what do you feed on? What meat, M-E-A-T, do you feed on? I think I'm going to do a short snippet this year, 2023, on something I call Protect Your Meat. I'm going to do something solid on that, so be on the lookout for that content. But as a system, as a company, when you and your team meet, what meat, M-E-A-T, what diet, what food do you feed on? Remember that the gateway to your mind are your eyes and your ears. And so what are you watching with your team? What are you paying attention to? Hear me, young people, 99% of your life will change when you start to pay attention to the things that you feed yourself with. It is very, very important. 99% of your life will change when you start paying attention to what you feed your mind on and what you choose to listen to with your ears. Because whether you like it or not, what you are feeding your mind with and what you are listening with subconsciously has a way it programs your life. And that is how come this channel should be your home. That is how come whenever you're on YouTube, this should be the go-to channel you should visit. Because here, my focus is to make sure that I always leave my fellow man better than I found them. So the Queen of Sheba is questioning Solomon's wisdom, and the thing she notices is the fact that the meat that was on his table. Guys, I want you to know and I want you to understand that what you keep eating will eventually eat you up. I take it again. What you keep eating will eventually eat you up. So you need to be very, very careful what you are eating. Now, another thing that the Queen of Sheba noticed when it came to Solomon's system, after the meat that was on his table, we noticed the sitting of his servants. An organization must have order. An organization must have order. Any organization that does not have order will go out of place, which means that every single person within the organization must know his place and his demands that is expected of him. The level of order in the long term will produce a sense of security in any given system. I take it again. The level of order within a system will produce a long-term sense of security. And so the next thing she sees is the sitting of his servants, which means that when she entered Solomon's system, when she entered Solomon's business, when she entered Solomon's company, they were not seated anyhow. They were not carrying themselves about anyhow. Rank was not broken. Protocol was not broken. Well, we live in a world and a generation today where people tend to think that because they had a misunderstanding with their CEO or with their boss, they have every right to talk about the man that's paying their salary. They think that because they had a little misunderstanding with their CEO or boss, they have a right to probably talk about a man who is feeding multiple homes. You understand? Rank is something that is very, very important when building any kind of system, else there'll be chaos. That's the reason why you do not just get up and walk into the Jubilee House or the presidential house. There's a whole protocol that you must go through to make sure that you have access to such a place. And so it's very, very important. Now, the next thing that the Queen of Sheba noticed, which is a sign of a good system that will succeed, she says that, and the attendance of his ministers and their apparel, attitude and attendance to work. Another thing that will skyrocket by far the system that you are building is the attitude and the attendance to which your vision partners or your workers approach work. I remember I was having a conversation with one of my big brothers, Derek Vomawo, who is based in Germany. And whilst the conversation was ongoing, he told me one thing. He said, Moses, staying in Germany all these years, one thing that I have realized within the system and the way of work is that the people have a certain attitude and culture towards work that I do not find in Africa, that I do not find in Ghana. And that's the reality on ground. I remember one time I was in Dubai and I happened to visit a friend, and she gave me a specific time to show up at her workplace. So I went to the Mall of the Emirates, went to her workplace, caught her within the exact time she gave me, and all we had to talk about lasted in 20 minutes. Not because we wanted to talk for 20 minutes, but within 20 minutes, she's supposed to return back to work. And at work, she cannot and should not use her phone. And I was like, wait, you mean at work you don't pick your phone? And she says, my boss, as soon as he sees that you have picked your phone during work hours, you are fired. And I'm like, wait, what a culture. What an attitude, because this is not something that you see you see a lot in our part of the world, Africa, Ghana, Nigeria. You won't see such a thing. Notice that when the Queen of Sheba had seen the wisdom in Solomon's system, one thing she took notice of was the attendance of his ministers and their apparel. Is very, very important. When you are building a system, it is not just all about the results. It is also about the attitude and the manner in which the people carry themselves about. It's very, very, very important. Now, I've always said that the guy who does more, or the guy who puts in a lot of effort and work, will always achieve more than the guy who puts in little. Now, it's a new year, so I believe that a lot of people are setting their goals and trying to structure their year and all of that. Let me bring a little bit of context to what I'm saying. Now, if Mr. A is setting out his goal plan for the year, and he sets out a goal plan to accomplish 10 things in a year, and Mr. B is setting out his goal plan and he sets out to accomplish 2 things in a year. At the end of the year, let's say that Mr. B accomplished everything he wanted to do, which was the 2 things he wrote. He accomplished it. He's successful. Now, let's say Mr. A, who wrote down 10 things, could not accomplish all the 10 things, but he accomplished 8 things. Now, Mr. A will be more successful in the given year than Mr. B, simply because he put in a lot of work and a lot of effort than Mr. B. The baseline is, in this world, what I have come to realize is that the guy who works hard, the guy who puts in a lot of work, will always outdo the guy that does not put in a lot of work. It's rocket science. That is how it's supposed to be. Yesterday I was watching a short snippet on Instagram. It was an interview between Lil Baby and one woman. It was at a radio station, and The woman says that Lil Baby shouldn't work again because, with all of the money that he has, he's not supposed to work again. And Lil Baby just questioned her. He said, have you seen anybody that does not work? And the woman was stunned and says, everybody is working, from the billionaires to the millionaires. And he said something. He said, you're going to be spending money for the rest of your life. And so you need to definitely then sit up and decide that you're going to work for the rest of your life as far as you want to spend money. And the scriptures are emphatic when they say that the Lord will bless the hands of the guy that is working. So what are you doing with your hands? And what attitude are you attaching to what you are doing with your hands? And so another thing you notice that the Queen of Sheba touched on briefly was their apparel. As you can see, he says that, and the attendance of his ministers and their apparel. What is the outlook of your business? How do your workers dress? How do I'm looking at a system. So a system is also a family. If you're a husbandman, how does your family appear? Outlook. He says she took notice of the apparel of his ministers. The overall outlook of your business is what we call frontline ownership. So when somebody enters your office space, right from the entrance to coming to see you, the CEO, or to coming to see whoever they are coming to see in the business or in the company, what is the outlook of the place? When they enter, you who is the CEO to the last person, probably your cleaner or something, how are they looking? It is very, very important to note. And I've always said that your aura is very, very important when it comes to business entrepreneurship. It's one of the first things that people notice about you, from how you are dressed. Probably maybe later this year, I should do a content on understanding frontline ownership. And so this is something that the Queen of Sheba took notice of. She paid so much attention to the apparel in which Solomon's guests, or in which Solomon's ministers were dressed. Now, the next thing that she talks about in the system is something that really caught my attention. And in my day, I don't see a lot of, very few, maybe I see a lot of that. I see very few Christians being bold enough to talk about the fact that they serve a living God, or they serve God, and they are business people as well. Sometimes they want to try and hide it, but you would see that she says that she noticed how Solomon, his ascent by which he went up to the house of the Lord, and there was no spirit in her. With all the things that she noticed, the woman says there was no spirit in her. If you're a guy, or if you're married, or if you're not married, and you've ever made out before, and a woman says that there was no spirit in her, you should understand what an experience that just the Queen of Sheba watching Solomon's empire, what it gave her, you understand. So she says that there was no spirit left in her. But she noticed the accent by which he went up to the house of the Lord. Every single time I have looked at the Muslim faith, they are never shy, irrespective of who or what they are, musicians, business people, to proclaim their faith. And I remember I was talking to a couple of friends of mine, and I said, most of the times I see during the Mecca season, when they are supposed to visit Mecca annually, you'll see people like Aliko Muhammad Dangote and Alhaji Rabiu of Boa Group in their private jets with their outfits all clad in white, headed to Mecca. And they are not shy to show you that they have a way by which they also ascend up to the house of the Lord. And so, if you're a business person, if you're a businessman and you are doing business, one of the things that should be evident as a sign in building your business is the ascent by which you go up to the house of the Lord. Another thing that I've noticed is that no matter what, at a certain level of wealth, there should be a certain authority in the spirit, or there should be a certain spirit backing your wealth. And so you need to have a certain accent by which you go up the house of the Lord. And so this is Signs of a Succeeding System, part 1. I drew inference and reference from the scriptures, how that the Queen of Sheba had gone to visit Solomon, and she asked him questions to prove himself. In the end, when she had seen everything Solomon had done, there was no spirit left in her. This year, if you are building your business, have these nuggets in mind, so that when people visit your business, when people come to see the fame that they have heard of you, they can really testify to the fact that you are worth the hype, you are worth the fame, because per what they have come to see, they are not just seeing the structure, but they are seeing the foundation of what you have built. I'll be bringing you Signs of a Succeeding System, part 2. part 2 is going to come strictly from my book, Understanding Systems Thinking, The Modern Art of Building Learning Organization. And so do stick and stay and hold on for part 2. Love and light. My name is Moses Biata, and do subscribe to this channel. Bless.